When you hear the name Kennedy, likely what comes to mind is the former President John F. Kennedy, or JFK. But in reality, this family's name was famous long before his birth. Today, I'll walk you through a brief history of the Kennedy family, some of the horrible tragedies that plagued them, and one massive one that no one's really talking about, but should be. Let's get into it. JFK's father was Joseph Kennedy, who was an Irish-American millionaire and politician. In 1907, at Old Orchard Beach, he met Rose Fitzgerald, a socialite who was thought of as sort of a princess of Boston's Catholic aristocracy. She recounted that she fell in love at 17 and never fell out. And after 7 years of courting, they finally married in 1914. It took so long because Rose's father was not a fan of Joseph, and we'll find out later that his instincts may have been spot on. They lived in Brookline, Massachusetts, and had 9 children. Yep, 9. That's like an entire starting lineup for a baseball team. They were Joseph Jr., John, Rosemary, Kathleen, Eunice, Patricia, Robert, Jean, and Edward. And sorry if you were hoping that I would point out which is which in this photo, but I can't. That's too many kids. The family lived a pretty open and public life, which might be why they're referred to as America's royal family. And like most royal families, they had drama and secrets for days. In addition to being a family known for their wealth and status, they soon became known as a family that would face tragedy after tragedy. It starts in 1940 with Joseph Sr.'s name and reputation being tarnished. He was appointed as U.S. ambassador to Great Britain by Franklin D. Roosevelt, and while in London, dude was not having a good time. He was flung into a world on the brink of war, which was something that he opposed and even tried to keep the US out of altogether. He also fought bitterly with the State Department and FDR and was outspoken about his opposition to the president's policy of coming to aid Britain during Hitler's onslaught. And to add to all that, he was also secretly meeting with German diplomats and making anti-Semitic remarks. Him opposing America's anti-Nazi policies led to him stepping down from his role in disgrace and dashed any and all hopes that he may have had for a future political career. He then started the process of grooming his eldest son, Joseph Jr., for future presidency. Moving on to 1941, there's a really massive event here, which is the star of the video, so we'll take a slight detour and then swing right back. 1944 was a big year, and not in a good way. In May, Kathleen decided to marry outside of the church. Remember, this family is super Catholic, so in turn, she was shunned by the family. Joe Jr. was the only Kennedy in attendance at her wedding. Just 4 weeks later, her husband Billy was sent to the Belgian front. August of the same year, Joe Jr. was killed when his plane exploded while he was over France on a secret bombing mission. Less than a month later, which was only 4 months after Billy and Kathleen had wed, Billy was shot through the heart by a German sniper. When Kathleen died in a plane crash in 1948, her father Joseph was the only Kennedy in attendance, so the shunning was still real strong. And just in case you're counting, yes, that is 2 Kennedy kids who died in plane crashes. With Joseph Jr.'s unfortunate demise, Joseph Sr. started to look towards John, often referred to by his initials, JFK, as the person to live vicariously through. To groom for presidency. JFK earned 2 medals in World War II, had a brief stint in journalism, served in the lower and upper chambers of Congress, and managed to publish a book that won a Pulitzer Prize in 1960. In that year's election, he narrowly defeated Nixon and became the youngest person to assume the presidency by election, and it is wild for me to even think about a time that this country wasn't run by senior citizens. In 1963, he was assassinated in Dallas, suffering gunshot wounds in very similar locations of the body as his brother RFK would just 5 years later in 1968. This series of events is quite unfortunate and may give you a sense of why the term Kennedy curse has come about. These events are horrific, and we're just going to add one more and then we'll get to some positives, I promise. Let's skip back a couple of decades and talk about Rosemary. She was the oldest daughter of the 9 children, born in 1918. Her parents noticed that she wasn't as active as her older brothers and later found that she had a hard time keeping up with her younger siblings. She was said to have an intellectual disability, though it should be noted that back then they used the R word, and I don't want to use that, but just want you to be aware in the event that you decide to dig deeper into this. Anyway, the reason for her developmental challenges may have something or everything to do with her birth scenario. When Rose was in labor with Rosemary, her doctor was delayed, so the nurses physically held with their actual literal hands, held baby Rosemary in the birth canal for 2 hours. Some say this happened because the Spanish flu was so prevalent prevalent, and the doctor may have genuinely been busy. Others say that it was because doctors were paid per baby delivered, meaning they needed to be present and deliver the baby themselves in order to be compensated at all. Holding a baby like that for that long can result in a lack of oxygen and possible brain damage. In Rosemary's early 20s, she allegedly experienced seizures and violent mood swings. While living in a convent her father sent her to, nuns reported that she would sneak out at night to meet men. Being from a traditionally Catholic family, her being sexually active outside of marriage was something that was frowned upon, and Joseph Sr. may have also seen her behavior as a threat to the high political ambitions that he had for his sons. In 1941, at the age of 23, Joseph arranged for a secret lobotomy for Rosemary. Well, secret for most of the family. The siblings were told that she was off teaching at a school in another state, but there's a lot of debate on whether or not Rose, the mother, knew or not. There's also debate on if Rosemary herself knew that she was about to be subjected to a rather new medical procedure. Apparently, and I'll try not to get too gory here, she was asked to sing and recite poems during the lobotomy, and the doctors only stopped snipping away at parts of her brain when she was no longer able to speak. After the lobotomy, she was only able to walk with assistance and was able to spoon feed herself but couldn't handle her own bathing or hold a full conversation. She remained institutionalized for over 60 years until she died in 2005. Joseph Sr. suffered a massive stroke a few years before he died and spent the last years of his life nonverbal, with violent mood swings, physically incapacitated, and unable to care for himself, which, I don't know, does that sound familiar to you? Okay, I said there were some positives, and there are. Eventually, the family started learning not only the truth, but also the whereabouts of Rosemary. This sparked a passion for the family to champion the rights of the mentally disabled. Her siblings began to speak very openly in support of people who couldn't speak for themselves. In 1963, the last bill that JFK signed just 3 weeks before he was assassinated was the Community Mental Health Act. It gave rights to people who had developmental disabilities and mental health disorders for the very first time. In 1968, Rosemary's sister Eunice founded the Special Olympics, which is the world's largest sport organization for children and adults with intellectual and physical disabilities. And in 1990, Ted Kennedy was a chief sponsor of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which ensures that millions of disabled Americans are able to live productive lives free from discrimination in public accommodation and employment. So Rosemary's life was a tragedy, there's no doubt about that, but the Kennedys also saw her story as inspiration for creating a future free from the tragedies that she faced. In Ted Kennedy's words, Rosemary taught us the worth of every human being.